As we all know, Chacham Ovadia had time for everybody. We've heard and we know. He didn't only have time for the Sfaradim and for his own, but for anyone, regardless of race or color. Ashkenazim, Hasidim, Litaim, it made no difference. The next Maspid had, on occasions both here and in Eretz Yisrael, the opportunity to be in the midst of Chacham Ovadia. I ask Dein Dunnershlita to come forward to give Divrei.
Ve'ele toides Yitzchak ben Avrom oides Yitzchak. Klal Yisrael have a connection, father and son, son and father. We have a continuity. We're not newcomers. We connect ourselves from today directly, all the way back to B'rias Olam. Since Matan Torah, the Torah is handed down from generation to generation, father to son, grandson. We've got the same Torah word for word as it was. That's the Kabbalah. But before Matan Torah, where's our Kabbalah? How do we know what happened? Is it only what we read from Sforim? Says a Ramban? No. We have a Kabbalah from B'rias Olam till Matan Torah, 2,500 years almost. There were only 7 who spanned that generation. And the Ramban explains, from Adam till Matan Torah, they lived a little longer than today. There were 7 who met each other directly. And each one told the next one, the Mabul, the Rafloga. It wasn't from a book that they learned it was handed down. Avram Avinu met with Shem. That's already a posuk in the Torah. Umalki Tzedek Melech Sholem, Shem, many years older than Avram, they met. What did they talk about? What was the discussion? To Talosh Medrash. Avram Avinu asked Shem a question. Keitzad Yitzosem min HaTeva. I hear about the great Mabul that took place a long time ago. How did you come out of the Mabul? Omar Loi, Shem said to Avram, B'tzdoka shoyinu oisim. We were given tzdoka. Omar Loi, V'chimat tzdoka yechem lasos. What charity did you give there? V'chi ani im ho'esham. Do they come round in the morning here sometimes? Were there any, excuse the expression, schnorrers who came into the table collecting? What stock were you doing there? Omar Loi, and Shem answered Avram. Haloi, Omar Loi, al hachaya v'al behema v'horev. We had a lot of stocker, not with collectors, but with all the animals. Lo yoyinu yishenim kol halaylo. We hardly slept. Each one with a supply at the right time their food. And on one occasion, when father was a bit late in serving a lunch, Reb Leib, the lion, gave him a kick. And father was wounded. We worked very, very hard. And with that schus, we came out to the table. And the Welt asked a very simple question. What was this question Avram Avinu asked Shem? How did you come out to the table? How did you come out? The same schus, he went in, he came out. Everyone knows that Noach was Ish Tzaddik. He was the only man who was worth being saved. Well, if he was saved to go in, he was saved to come out. What's the question? Aber Gerhard einmal ein gutes Wort. In Zohar Kodesh it says that Noach was a very special man. Geheaten, careful, exactly what he did. But there's a posuk that says, Kimei Noach Zoisli. The flood is referred to Noach's flood. For the Zohar Kodesh, why is it Noach's flood? He didn't bring the flood. Says the Zohar Kodesh, he was a tzaddik. But one thing he didn't do, he didn't go around enough to rebuke people, to be mekarev people. When he heard that the world would be destroyed, he had to accept it. He said 1 or 2 doshas or more, he built the table. But the Zohar Kodesh says to run around from place to place, from Pontus to Pilatus, and encourage people and daven for them, that he didn't do. Kimei Noach. Noach was accepted in the table to be saved. We're now building a new world, Reb Noach. Who's going to look after the new world, that it doesn't fall like it did beforehand? You kept to yourself beforehand. We need someone who's going to go out in the world and work hard and be mekarev and give droshas. Who's going to do that? You haven't done it till now. Ask Avon to shame, what brought you out of the table? I know it brought you in, but where were your schuyas? Where did you show that you've got the ability to work hard for the community? And Shem said, you're right, Avon Marino. But in the table itself, we worked very hard for others. We spent Yom V'Layla in looking after others, in finding out what each animal needs and wants at the right time. On an odd occasion, perhaps we made a mistake, but we improved ourselves to such, and that gave us the license to go out to the table. Tyre, we are living at a time when Bosan Cherev u'Bilbel Kol Ha'olam. During our time and a little bit before our time, the whole world was turned upside down. Be it Europe, be it North Africa, for different reasons. Everyone knows what happened in Europe, and all the kehillas, the communities, fled. What happened to them? What happened to all the private kehillas? And the Rebbeinu Shalom organized that each Rabbistebe, each Chassidus, the Rebbeinu Shalom spared a Rebbe, one. Or a Rosh HaKol, one. Or a rich man, one. And when they came to Eretz Yisrael, there was one Gerer Rebbe, there was one Belzer Rebbe, there was one Kloisenberger Rebbe, and so we'll go through all the Chassidus, and they managed to build themselves up. And perhaps 1 or 2 who didn't have a Rebbe, and that Chassidus isn't there. But they joined up with the brother Chassidus, and Chassidus Baruch Hashem flourished. What with the Litvish Oilem? The yeshivas were destroyed. What happened to them? Came a Slabodka Rosh Yeshiva, came a Mira Rosh Yeshiva from Eastern Europe, came a Ponevezh HARAV, one man. And he says, Ponevezh, it's gone. We'll build it up. And so the Ashkenazische world rebuilt itself. And Baruch Hashem, today, Torah wächst. Tyre Eden. What happened to the Sephardic world? They were also thrown off guard, not by the Yamach Shemoy of Europe, but the ugly scene that happened in the Medina when they brought over thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Sephardim who kept the Torah since Churban Beis HaMikdash, who went with lovely long pairs, who were never mechal Shabbos, who ate kosher, who were careful in their marriages, who dressed b'tznius, and they were brought across to Eretz Yisrael. And they were made, they were forced, eingerät. Country is enough. Eretz Yisrael must speak, lo tzarich bo haTorah. And as we are aware, they fell to the sides, thousands upon thousands. All went to non-religious schools. All stopped keeping Shabbos and all the other things. And there was no one, there was no Rebbe, and there was no Rosh Yeshiva who saved them. Let's face the facts. The words Sfardische Talmidei Chachamim are not denying it. But they sat and learned. They didn't have this ability, not this quality, or not this bren. I can't answer you what it is. But they didn't. There were no moisters, frume moisters for the Sfardim. They were not there. Everything else flourished, not them. Darin, the Rebbeinu sent someone, a very valuable shliach, Chacham Ovadia. He answered Avraham Avinu's question, with what schus are you going to go out into the world? And he answered it, yes, I'm going to go, as we heard and we will hear, from village to village, from house to house, from kehillah to kehillah. And we will start from scratch. He had nothing, no moisters, no committee, no rabbonim. And he created Moetzes Chachmei HaTorah, Al Ma'ayan, all these wonderful Heimische moisters, and he fought for it. And we'll discuss it later, to get something out of this, to have a proper Torah de Chinuch, without compromises. He went from place to place, and as Shem said to Avraham, and as the Achronim HaMedayik, not just Stam Chesed, but he gave away, as we heard in will hear, his last drop of strength in order to achieve this. We will add, he got the encouragement of Ashkenazi Rosh Yeshiva, especially HARAV Shach at the time. He set it up with him to form all these moisters and made sure between them that the moisters were set up al Taras HaKodesh. And then he started off those wonderful shiurim. I remember 50 years ago and more, when I was in Chevron Yeshiva, Chacham Ovadia was a young man then, packed out shiurim on Friday night, a couple of hours at a time always. He said his halacha, simple things for the public. He said his drush. He said his various lomdas. He gave over for his Torah. Nothing was too far for him. On a Friday night, I saw this somewhere, but it is reliable. One Friday night in the pouring rain, there's a knock at his door, and he's told of a family quite far away that are thinking of sending their child to Mamlachti Dati. In English, it's called Dati. Perhaps the word is orthodox. I can't translate it properly. Not enough. Must be Chinuch Atzmoi. And in Friday night, in the pouring rain, he walked quite a distance, only for one family. Tarid, he was Moise Nefesh. For all the Sfardim, wherever they were, even one Neshama has to learn Torah, has to learn properly. And then eventually he built up this Motzei Shabbos Shir every week, Chok V'lo Ya'avar, a couple of hours. And in El Chodesh, he flew right around the country in this helicopter and spoke wherever it was, wherever it was needed. There was nothing ever too much for him. Yes, He did what Shem told Avraham Avinu. He did it fully, as hard and as well and as good as he can. And he attended every bris, as the Rabbanim have said before, and endless stories we're not here to tell tonight, bristen and pidyon bens and chasnas. He had a feeling. He had a feeling. And Moyel came to his bris medrash to circumcise a child, went across to him just to say shalom. And when he went back, the Moyel to mar the child, Chacham said to him, Tishma, Tzara de Yanuka. Tzara de Yanuka, there's a pain for this child. And the Moyel looked at the Chacham, pain, of course there's pain. And he continued, he thought he was making a joke. And the Tzara de Yanuka, what did the Chacham want? You just gave me your hand. It was cold. You got to touch with a cold hand this little baby who's just been wrapped up. It's extra tsar. The baby doesn't need that at all. This is the great big man that everything is there, but he thinks of each individual. A parent said they came from America with a child of 7 who was deaf. They came to Chacham Ovadia, he started crying. The parent said, we've been used to this child, we've had him a long time. But the Chacham had a feeling for everyone. He was carried with, but for the tzibur. The family relates. He has, as you know, Klein, a large family, 10 or 11 children. One of his daughters moved out of town to Haifa, and she begged her father, Abba, come to Haifa. And he didn't come, and he loved his children, he loved them. And his man, and he was long time he never came. Yes, on an occasion about Tshuva came to him from Haifa. We need you in Haifa for something to do A, B, C, and D. He went to Haifa and the daughter says, after he did everything there for all of our Tshuvas, eventually, yes, he did come to visit me, that's true. He was Meshubed, and that's the only way, Tyreen, this is the only way to do something, to be Meshubed. When you're Mishabed, and that's why we see, as we'll soon see, he had such siyata d'shmaya. One of the family told me he had a brother, Alav Sholem Naim, his brother, ordinary person, and he had a Beis Medrash in Romema, small Beis Medrash, very small. And one day he asked his brother, after being there 4 years, Achi, ulai tagid kan, eze drasha b'leil Shabbat. Can't you speak here on Friday night? He's got this big program on Friday night, HARAV OVADIA, where he spoke in OVADIA YOSEF. And he said, Lamalo, we'll fit it in somehow. He went there to speak, packed out, or there was a small little place, packed out, didn't disturb, it was a small place. Time he finished, he got a little bit late, and he said, I can't go home anymore to make Kiddush for my family. I won't get back in time for Mashiach and OVADIA Yosef. So he stayed there, sent his family home, and went only from there to OVADIA Yosef. But through some delay, he came half an hour late. He normally starts at 8 o'clock. From 8 to 10 was a shir. From 10 to 20 past 10 were questions, and 20 past 10, clockwork, he always went home. But that he came half an hour late. And therefore the whole thing went on half an hour late. Tareen, at 20 past 10 on the dot, there was an explosion. And the wall in OVADIA Yosef collapsed. And at the doorway, if anyone would have been walking out then, they would not have survived. He had a siyata d'shmaya for his chesed and for his shiurim. Elakei ovi be'ezroi. The Rabban Shalom looks after. Don't think you give away, you've given away and you haven't got. You give away and you get back. Everyone talks about his wonderful memory. Tarid, that's a maton min hashemayim. That's not what we talk about. He did have a good memory. I would say he's a yochid b'doiro in his memory. I'm not denying it. 1 in a million, probably did. That's not. The Chavetz Chaim says, on on the Mishnah in Ovos. When the Mishnah says on Rabbi Lezer, Boya Sid She'ein Ma'abed Tippa. Rabbi Yochanan had many Talmidim, one was called Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Yochanan said about him, Boya Sid is like a pit which is waterproof, doesn't forget anything. But the Chavetz Chaim, what compliment is that? He's got a good memory, is that a compliment? That's a matona. Today, the Chavetz Chaim. We're not talking about his memory. I remember, said the Chavetz Chaim, I was a little boy, and one day the Kaiser came through town, and there was an old man of 70 odd, and he repeated to me that 60 odd years ago, when the Kaiser came, he repeated every detail of the Kaiser's visit. The color of the horse, the color of the clothing, the streets they went through, all the people who accompanied him, detail. I know this old man. This old man, excuse me, is quite a dunce. A very thick head, but he remembered it all in detail 60 odd years ago. Why did he remember? So the Chavetz Chaim is something that you like and enjoy and value, you don't forget. You forget things that are unimportant. Most people don't forget to come for lunch. Something that is for them important, they're always there. Boya Sid She'ein Ma'abed Tippa wasn't expressing Rabbi Lezer's memory. He remembered everything because he loved it. Yes, it's true, Chacham Ovadia had a memory 1 in a million, that is true. But if not for his love for Torah, if not, as we heard before and we will hear, his tremendous hasmoda, this could never have worked. As once at the chasana of one of his children, or Eineklach, I think, and the minute he said, I have to go home. Saba, lama lolech habayta, be'emetz hachatuna. Mechakim li babayit, they were waiting for me at home. They found out later who was waiting. The Rashba, the Rambam, the Rishonim were waiting for me at home. I have to go home and learn. He loved those Rishonim. He loved the Gemara. This was his life at all times. Yes, he had a memory. I remember in Chevron Yeshiva. I don't think it was in my time. He came once to Chevron Yeshiva. We've got what's called an Oitzas Forum, a very big Oitzas Forum. There was a sefer there that he didn't have. He went to the Gabba and said, Tani Amaftech, Ani Rotze, Nistakel B'Sefer. He let him into the Oitzah. About half an hour later, the Gabba came in and sees him in the Oitzah, learning a sefer. The Gabba says, Kvod HARAV, Ayom yesh matzlima, yesh photocopy, efshar letzalem oto. You didn't stay here, we'll photocopy it for you, and take it home. He answered, Kvar tzilamti. He did, yes, he did have a fantastic man, I'm not denying it. I could go on and on, but there are other speakers. A very interesting story. His memory was something very special. He once met Rabbi Wozner, a Gaon Rabbi Shmuel Wozner. We were discussing something. Says Chacham Ovadia to Rabbi Wozner, Tislach li Kvod HARAV, ze katuv b'Shevet HaLevi. This is in your Sefer Shevet HaLevi. It's written all about it. Says Rabbi Wozner, he knows the Shevet HaLevi better than I do, which happens to, it's true. He could read from cover to cover, and I cannot get over this. Don't know how it works. If I have to learn the Tshuvas Chasam Sofer, take me a day or 2 or 3, he would read from cover to cover, hundreds of Tshuvas. And he remembered, I met someone recently who gave out a sefer quite thick. He said, I met Chacham Ovadia. I said, Lama talo lateri ta sefer shelcha? He said, I didn't know you wanted. He said, I gave him the sefer Friday night. I met him Shabbos morning. He'd been through it. He went through the sefer. He had a tremendous tfisa, he had a tremendous memory, and he remembered from the top of his soul. He was in America once, and he said a shiur, a big shiur, in a certain place. In the middle of shiur, a Talmid Chacham gets up and asks him a question. He looked at him and says, Kvodo HARAV, Tzvi Shechter? Yes, that's me. You know, no, I don't. Hakushia Hazu, this question you're asking is printed in your sefer. That's how I know it's you. You've learned the sefer, and I think gehabt. Rabbi say, I don't mean to cheer you up, but there's something out of this world. But besides all that, he went through from cover to cover. Someone told me the other week also, he came to a chasna, there was a yeshivish chasna, there was a shaila about the brochus, what getunt and getummelt, embassy yeshivish chasna. He came late, Mayesh kam, they said, the brochus on the chuppah, somewhere wrong, the chosn didn't hear. They say the Lord tzarich lang, so you don't have to repeat it again. Fine. At that chuppah, there was an einikel of the Tzitz Eliezer, Rav Waldenberg was there. So, oh, there was schwere shaila this, I'm going to ask my Zayda. She went along to the Zayda Tzitz Eliezer and said, listen, this shaila, what happened? Schwere shaila. He looked and looked. He found the Chsum that's Meitel, Matya. Fine. Then it said a few weeks later, I met HARAV OVADIA. And I said to him, Shamati that Kvod HARAV was Batya this. Lama hitarot et zeh? So he looked at him and said, Zeh mitshuvet shalachem, from your people, Zeh chatam sofa. He was on top of everything. He remembered everything, and the Ikya, and we quoted before the Anivas, he'll quote anyone by name. Any kuntras that came out, big, small, Talmud Chochem or not, nothing was called below his dignity. He quoted by name. But they come back, Tyre Eden, Sfarda Eden. He saved us, he made us, and here's important, he was outspoken. Didn't disturb him if other people, if everyone would say differently to him. He worked it through, he was outspoken. Avram Avinu at this cellar looked for a shidduch. Everyone says, Avram, you'll never find. Go and send abroad, don't tell me what to do, I'll do what's right. And he found. He was outspoken in many, many things. For those who remember the fight on Hesped of Yosef, and he was the one who broke it. The Sfardim for many years said, no, we're Sfardim. And I heard from myself many times, Bes Yosef, that's it. L'chumra or l'kula. He fought for us. He fought for the Sfardim, all the Tyrian, he fought for tznius as well. How to dress, how to cover yourself. He fought where ladies should stand with the size of a mechitza. All these modern new ideas, coming in, coming out, he didn't have it at all. He put the Kehillah on the Haredish map. And we have to recognize, we have to go mamish in the way that he wanted us to do. This is what it is. Tarin, I want to come to the point. We could go on and on. He did do a lot of things. He was Makarev. We're not here to just go with the past. We're here to come and take something home with us. Tarin, he was down to earth. With all the big Eloishkeit, he was a wonderful man, as you heard before. He used to patch you here and patch you there. This wasn't a fist fight. This was all. He was very, very friendly. He was all there. He was with us. Down to earth. I remember the occasion, I don't know whether I should say this now or not, but just to say it was down to earth. A few months ago, I was in America, and I met a doctor, an ear doctor, Goldstein, Alan Goldstein. He's a mumche gadol, specialist in the ear. And he said, I'll tell you something very interesting. The Satmar Rebbe, the old Satmar Rebbe, the Bioilish, had sometimes an ear problem, a terrible ear problem. They wished to help me, and I cured him. He was very thankful. And he said, I'll say it in Yiddish a bit, der Reibisch soll schicken Maluchim ki Malucha v'yitzhaveloch. The Reibisch will send you all his Maluchim, and he should help you. Sometime later, HARAV OVADIA's son had an ear problem. And came to America, and the same doctor helped him. HARAV OVADIA phoned him up. תודה רבה, מה תעשה? שהקדוש ברוך הוא ישלח מלאכו, לא יודע, Hashem, she said the malach. She said, I asked HARAV OVADIA, she said, surely the Satmar Rebbe gave me malachim. And you only give me one malach, malacho. מה אתה אומר? מלאך אחד ספרדי יותר מכל המלאכים אשכנזים. Rabbi Israel, I'm only telling you this. He was a wonderful, we talk about him, he's far away from us. Tyreen is not far away from us. I want to take something home. Everyone knows the famous story of the Netziv, the Volozhin of Rosh Yeshiva, who in his late years made a Suda, a wonderful party, and he thanked the Rebbeinu Shalom. I'm not a shopkeeper. The great Netziv, who was Rosh Yeshiva of the best Litvish Yeshiva ever been, the Rebbe of all the old Rosh Yeshivas, one who wrote endless amounts of Sforim, the Shultas, Meishiv Dovo, whatever you like, loads of Sforim. And in the late years, Baruch Hashem, I'm not a shopkeeper. Netziv, what have you got to do with a shopkeeper? He said, I'll tell you what, I was a bocha. And I was learning the yeshiva and I wasn't happy. I decided one day, I'm leaving and I'm going to open up a small business. And let my thoughts carry me and imagination take me for a ride. I would have opened a lovely business. I would have been successful. I would have parnosa. I would give a bit of stocker. I would keep Shabbos. And after 120, I'd come upstairs thinking, wow, I get a wonderful Olam Haba. And I come in, and Bezin says to me, hey, where's Volozhin Yeshiva? Where's the Netziv Sefer? Where's your Meishiv Dover? I said, excuse me, you pressed the wrong button on the computer. The wrong person. I? Volozhin Rosh Yeshiva, what's going to do with me? I would never have dreamt that I could do this, never. But now the Baruch Hashem, I made that one decision many years ago. That saved me, and I'm making a siddur today. Tyreen, Chacham Ovadia, as we heard, almost went out of yeshiva in the shop of his father, as the story is well known. When the Rebbe stood geholfen, he was pulled back at the right time. Tyreen, how many of us here are sitting in this room here and think for ourselves, can't we achieve much more, whatever age we are? Must we continue our life just because till now, whether we're young, whether we're middle, or whether we're further? Does that mean that till now I've done it, that's 100% right? How much or how many could or can achieve much more? Davening every day. There's some people who come to davening always 10 minutes late. Whether the clock moves or doesn't move, whether it's Shabbos or whether it's Slichas, it's always those 10 minutes late. Does that have to be for the rest of our life? Or some people come home at night and Mariv, I'm a bit tired, there's a minyan, but I'll daven at home. Must that always be? Don't we know that Tfilah B'Tzibah makes such a difference? Shiurim, every B'Sem Evrish has got a shir, got a rov, give a shir. Yes, you don't go to this shir. You haven't gone for years. Perhaps we sit and think, one more shir a week can't do any harm. One extra half hour a week can't do any harm. Must we continue, because we've done it for so long, in kashrus, we go away on holiday, are we always careful to make sure the same standard at home? Can we not somehow upgrade ourselves in our private life? In our communal life, every B'Sem Evrish needs people to help, needs people to organize. We've not been involved. Can't we go to the Rov, to the chairman and say, I'd like to do something? There's so much that everyone to do for the institutions, for the moisters. Isn't it time, Mizman Lezman, that we review it? Chacham Ovadia had for the ladies too, as we heard before, the Rebbetzin, and I could tell many stories, but I'm past my time, how the Rebbetzin was Sonua Kol Kevuda Bas Melech Pnimo. She was a Rebbetzin behind the scenes, but allowed him to learn. Ladies sometimes think that they're second rate if they're not allowed inside, if they're behind the mechitza. Torah ladies, you've got a shutfus in life with the Torah and the mitzvahs of the men. But there's a place for ladies. There's a place whether they may or may not come. It's not called second rate if they're not allowed in. It's not called second rate if they can't kiss the Sefer Torah. It's not called second rate if they're behind the mechitza. That's where they belong. The Rebbetzin Margalit, as we heard before. What a ishok sheira. What a joint chinuch they had. And one more very important thing. If we're talking about a little improvement, to support our Rabbonim and not undermine their authority as we use from time to time. Some newspapers think that they have a license to write what they like about whom they like. Isn't it time that we Bulbatim join and condemn any writing that's against the Talmud Chochem and against HARAV? Some time ago I got a call from a reporter from a paper. There was something went wrong in the community, as can easily happen. And the reporter rang me up. He wants to talk to me about it. I said, why do you want to talk to us? Well, we need Yosha, we need the truth, to do what's right. Fine, I'm ready to talk to you. Can I ask you a question first? You may. Are Yosha and Shabbos? A pause and quiet. Are Yosha and Shabbos? Pause and quiet. Are you Hashem Shabbos? No, I'm not. Good, fine. I'm ready to talk, but I think it's more important to make you Hashem Shabbos. Let's first deal with your problem and get you straight. And then it's Hashem, I'll do the other problem, and there's a more important well, I'm afraid we didn't make much headway in that way. But we saw that more in Parnosa, one of the klolas that all the Mauritian got, that we have to all look after our Parnosa. And these reporters, they need Parnosa, and the more controversial and the more cheeky they are, the more they earn. Tyreen, let's review it, and let's all hold hands together to support our Rabbonim. That's where HARAV OVADIA was. He had the last word. No one told him what to do. He had committees, he had Balbatim, he had Ashirim, many people. But he was the Rav, he was the Das Torah. We have Rabbonim, we have Talmidei Chachomim. Yes, Balbatim don't always understand, they haven't learned with the Rabbonim, but the Messiah as we started, from Bria Soel until today, we've got a Messiah handed down, and Sfardim all the more. For all those years, the Sfardim had a terrific Messiah of Shomer Torah mitzvahs. The Rebbe should hope that the good work of the Chacham should continue. Everyone will come home somehow or other. Take a little bit, can't take it all, but take something from the Größer Chacham that will help us, B'siyata D'Shmaya, to bring the ultimate redemption, B'vias Kohen Tzedek, in HARAV.